Show. I'm Jack Armstrong. He's Joe Getty.
Hello. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Starting to feel the pressure.
Happy Hanukkah. And the most dignified Ramadan.
God, and everything's so busy this time of year, as you mentioned yesterday. Went to a Jamba Juice yesterday. Took the kid. Did a quick Jamba Juice. It's like 50 people in there.
People want more juice in December? What? Oh, speaking of ingestibles, Craig, the Obamacare lawyer, is with us, and his beautiful and charming wife has prepared some cinnamon croissants for us.
Hey, now!
Craig, my question, re the croissants is there any butter left anywhere in California?
No, there's not.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Delicious. Oh, my God.
I'm working hard to gain every pound Vince lost.
Have you ever noticed that if you're enjoying a treat that has butter and cinnamon in it, if you get the perfect ratio, add more butter, then add more cinnamon, it's perfect again. Then you can add more butter and then more cinnamon. Boy, they balance each other in an exquisite ballet of tastifications.
That's a handy tip.
Oh, mama.
It is perfect.
Oh, they're beautiful. So, we were discussing before we took a break, the big, all this news happened to be ready to release before a long holiday weekend. So here it is, the big giant news dump before Thanksgiving. What happened?
Yeah, I've gotten accustomed to making sure I read the regulations that issue 2 or 3 days before a massive holiday like Thanksgiving. And you guys did hit upon one of the things that happened right before Thanksgiving was improved bailout terms for insurance companies, meaning that there was actually a lower threshold at which taxpayer dollars go to the insurance companies. That was issued right before Thanksgiving. But there were actually 5 other things buried in the regulations that have been really underreported. The first was a confirmation that the Obama administration does plan to let the largest unions off the hook for one of the largest taxes within Obamacare. There's actually a tax of approximately 1.5% of your premium, which for a lot of companies is $50,000 to $60,000 to $100,000. That tax goes to fund these insurance company bailouts that we've talked about.
Ah, yes.
The largest unions have been let off the hook for that tax after 2014.
Okay. And is there an explanation for why that's a important and fair thing to do?
Because they bribe us.
Yeah, well, the way they did it was they said the largest self-funded plans that actually administer their own plans, which means they own their own TPA, which means they're huge. Those plans, for whatever reason, and there's no good reason, are not going to have to pay this tax. And it just so happens that most of those plans are large unions.
See, this is the reason socialism, communism never works, is because it wouldn't work even if you tried to apply it fairly, but it never gets applied in any sort of fair way. Always people in charge with connections get better deals.
Right.
And this is one of those.
All right, we must move swiftly.
The other thing they did with that same exact tax, that tax was supposed to be allocated and paid in November of next year, and very quietly they moved it back a month and they moved it to an installment program, and that is so they didn't have to hit large businesses or all businesses right before the election and say, hey, you owe us $100,000 for the Obamacare tax. So they bumped it back. Open enrollment in the exchanges next year has also been quietly and conveniently moved back behind the election so that people in the exchanges, when they get their 20, 30, 40, 50% increase next year, they won't see that until after Election Day.
Wow.
This all happened right before Thanksgiving, guys.
That's a major move right there.
Every single one of these.
That might be the major move.
Yep. Every single one of these. Now we're down to number 4. The government actually admitted that they can't do a website for the small business exchange, and they bumped that back a year.
Right.
So we've got the individual exchange. Number 5, the higher premiums,
we hit that one.
The employer mandate. We're down to the last one. Okay. The employer mandate. The mandate that says you're going to pay $2,000 or $3,000 employer if you don't actually provide insurance. They elevated that number 6% before they've even implemented it.
Wow.
So that fine will be $2,120 or $3,180 next year when it goes into effect. So it's going to go up every year at 2 to 3 times CPI.
You know what's stunning about this is we've got a lawsuit that has a good potential to destroy Obamacare. But also there's one estimate 70% of doctors are going to opt out in California.
Yeah.
And do you think that number's a little high, or do you think that's somewhere close to accurate?
I think that number's on the high side, but I think it will be between 50 and 70%.
Right.
And I know you guys mentioned it, and there were some statistics with respect to the costs. The reason that's going to occur is because the costs are so dramatically reduced. You've got overall Medicare, which is the old folks coverage, that pays roughly 80 cents on the dollar for what procedures cost. Medicaid can be 40 to 50% of what something actually costs.
Right.
Obamacare reimbursements are going to be closer to that Medicaid level than the Medicare level, and that's why you're seeing these doctors who originally...
the headline is doctors aren't going to be paid anything for dealing with Obamacare patients.
They're going to be paid at Medicaid levels, and they don't want to be. They originally said, yeah, we'll sign up with Blue Shield for the exchanges, but they had no idea Blue Shield was going to reduce their reimbursements.
But I must point out, it is December 13th, and they still don't know how they'll be reimbursed.
No, they still don't know, and that's why we're seeing the doctors flood out.
Wow.
That's exactly right.
Wow. And you can't keep your drugs either, by the way. I don't know if we need to go into that. But.
No, you can't keep your drugs. One thing's going to happen here. Before we even get to the lawsuit, I want to tell you guys real quick. One thing that's going to happen, because there's no requirement of the size of the doctor list in Obamacare. So one thing we're going to see, and I know because we're working on it for large employers, is to say, oh, you want an elective surgery? You want something that's expensive? We have coverage for that. It's in Singapore. There's nothing that says we have to cover you in America for specific. We have to cover you for emergencies. But we could send you to India, Singapore, Thailand. If you want elective knee surgery, if you want back surgery, if you want something that we can schedule and delay, now they'll have to pay the travel. But paying the travel and sending you overseas for bypass surgery could save hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if I pay to put you and your spouse in a nice hotel room.
I've never been to Singapore.
Yeah, that's what's coming.
But yeah, you don't want to be going getting your surgery and recuperating and everything in some foreign land.
Not a lot of people won't want to do that. You're right. And that, I guarantee you, that's what's coming. And this is how it'll start. It'll start as a choice. It'll say, oh, Jack, if you want your surgery here in America, we'll pay 70% of the cost. But if you want to go to Singapore, we'll pay 100%, and we'll pay for a 5-star hotel for you and your spouse and all your travel.
Wow.
And some people will pick it, and you'll build the momentum as this is cool, and then they'll start pulling it.
Cool.
It absolutely can be, but you don't want to have to force everybody to it. And I think this is where it's headed.
Does your lifestyle allow for that? Mine doesn't. I need to do everything here in the United States because I have a job and I got kids and a wife and all that sort of stuff.
Right. That's where this is going. I can assure you. This overseas travel.
This is a nightmare. All right. The federal lawsuit. Give us the nickel version.
The federal lawsuit was heard in Washington, D.C. last Tuesday. We should have a decision in the next 4 to 6 weeks. If this thing wins, and there's a lot of legal scholars that think it can win, it could crumble Obamacare because, in effect, what the law said was if you are in a state-operated exchange, you, citizen, can get subsidies to buy your health care. The law doesn't say a state or federal exchange, and remember, we have both out there. We have 34 federal exchanges. This was done to entice the states to open their own exchanges like they do with federal highway dollars. They don't say you have to make your speed limit 65. They say if you make your speed limit 65, we'll give you cheese. That's what they did with Obamacare, and there's actually congressional record of Max Baucus saying that. I've posted it on my website, and Vince is going to link it. What they did is they said, they made a gamble, and they thought if we condition all these subsidies on the states opening their own exchanges, the administration thought, of course, the states will all open their exchanges, but 34 states opted not to open their exchanges. The IRS, who then had to write the regulations, panicked, and the IRS said, oh boy, we think that was just a drafting error. We're going to make the subsidies available for everybody in all 50 states, and it's the triggering of a subsidy that triggers a fine back to the employer. So if this wins, this lawsuit, and I think it can, you will have no individual mandate, and you will have no subsidies, and you will have no employer mandate in 34 of our states. And if that happens, this whole thing crumbles.
Oh, yeah. All bets
have
are off.
A ruling on that in a month and a half, you say?
Month and a half.
Well, maybe that'll do the work of...
It might. It absolutely might.
This is insane.
Because the administration had to argue that when the statute said state exchange, the statute really meant state or federal standing in the position of state. So it's what's the definition of is.
Wait a minute. Yeah,
they added stuff that wasn't there. And the people that are arguing against this said, no, they purposefully did it as state only. And we've got record of Max Baucus saying we had to condition it this way to get the states to do what we wanted them to do.
Right.
Well,
interesting.
The fact that they moved some of the more painful stuff to behind the election and were able to do that without the media picking up on it is
or choosing
something.
Not to pick up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is astounding. Boy, democracy is a terrible mess. And when you mix it with just a little pinch of socialism, it really turns ugly.
Well, you're an Obamacare expert, insurance expert. We're media experts, and it's surprising to me that the whole releasing stuff on a Friday or before a holiday actually works to bury it. But it does.
It does.
I mean, because, right before Thanksgiving, Wednesday afternoon, it was all Black Friday all the time.
Right.
That was the only thing on the news. Travel because of the bad weather and Black Friday. You couldn't have busted through that with any news. It'd been impossible.
I'm ready for before Christmas because I know something's coming.
Craig, how long until we're executing people's uncles on trumped-up charges as we move toward more and more toward a North Korean model?
Yeah, sometime prior to the elections.
You dare speak out against the party, you end up snuffed.
You don't have to bring baked goods every time you come in, and if you keep coming in, which you probably are because Obamacare's a mess, and you keep bringing baked goods, then we're going to be fat and we'll probably end up on Obama's death panels.
Hey, better you than me. Otherwise, I eat that stuff.
Thanks, Mrs. Craig.
What's coming up in your news, Marshall?
NSA leaker Snowden may be getting amnesty from the U.S. to silence him. And we have the Forbes new list of the highest paid women in music. And boy, I'll tell you, they made some money. Coming up minutes from now, Armstrong and Getty.
And as a reminder, if you need advice, you need to learn more, you want to read more about what we've been talking about, Craig's website, info is available at armstrongandgettyradio.com.